Hey everyone, we're working hard to get our first 1,000 subscribers, sign up and you won't regret it. I'd noticed Derek's Tinder habit the way you notice a leaking faucet. At first you pretend it's not happening, then it becomes the only sound in the room. Lunch in our office was always the same, microwaved leftovers, bad fluorescent lighting, and everyone trying to look busy enough to justify eating at their desk. Derek didn't bother pretending. He'd sit in the break area with his back against the vending machine, thumb moving like it was clocking overtime. He was the kind of guy who treated dating apps like a sport. Not in a charming way. I read motivational threads about closing way. That day, I only looked up because he made a sharp, amused sound. He'd been swiping for 10 minutes, leaning into the screen like the phone owed him money. Then he froze. His posture changed, shoulders up, chin forward, like he'd just recognized someone in a crowd. He turned his phone slightly away from himself, as if it was suddenly dangerous to hold too close. And then he angled it toward me. Derek and I weren't friends. We weren't enemies either. We were coworkers who shared a Slack channel and sometimes the same air. If he was showing me something, it wasn't for my benefit. It was because he wanted a reaction. I leaned in, mostly out of reflex. The profile photo was a woman with dark hair, half smiling in warm sunlight. The kind of photo that looks casual but takes 17 tries to get right. Her eyes were familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. Because I'd seen that face up close every morning for the last 2 years. Maya. My fiancée. My hand tightened around my fork without me meaning to. The metal bit into my fingers. I tasted salt like I'd bitten my own tongue. Derek didn't shove the phone into my face. He held it at a respectful distance, like he was showing me a work email. Like this was normal. He asked one question. Not loudly. Not jokingly. Just calmly, like he was asking if I wanted mustard. And I wasn't ready for it. Not even close. My brain did that thing where it tries to protect you by offering other explanations first. Maybe it was someone who looked like her. Maybe it was an old photo from a public page. Maybe Tinder had turned into some creepy face scan app. Anything but the obvious. Derek watched me the way people watch a car slide on ice, curious, bracing for impact. I couldn't speak. My throat felt tight, like I'd swallowed something too big. I focused on details, because details are safer than feelings. The profile name wasn't Maya. It was M. The age was wrong by a year. The bio was short and confident in a way Maya never was online. A line about loving bad boys with good jobs, which sounded like a billboard, not a person. But the photos? There was one in a coffee shop where I recognized the wall mural. There was one from a hiking trail we'd done last spring. There was one from our living room, cropped close, but I could tell by the lamp behind her and the edge of the rug. That last one made my lungs forget their job. Because if this was fake, whoever made it had access to photos that weren't on her public socials. Photos from inside our apartment. Derek's question hung between us like smoke. The break room felt too bright, too open, like everyone could see my chest caving in. I forced myself to move. I swallowed. I made my face do something neutral. The thing about betrayal is you don't get a warm-up. No practice round. Your body reacts before your dignity can catch up. Derek kept the phone steady, waiting. I didn't answer his question. Not out loud. Instead, I asked him to scroll. He did. Slowly. Almost politely. The account had been active recently. There were prompts filled out. There were messages, blurred previews, enough to show there were conversations happening. My hands started to shake under the table. I wanted to storm out, drive home, and confront Maya immediately. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. I wanted to become someone who didn't care. I wanted everything at once. But something didn't fit. Maya hated dating apps. She'd said it 100 times, how they felt like shopping. She barely posted on Instagram. She didn't flirt with strangers online. If she had a secret life, it would have been the worst-kept secret in history because she couldn't lie convincingly about what she ate for lunch. And Derek, of all people, was the one delivering this to me? That part felt wrong, too. I looked up. His expression was controlled, but there was a flicker of something I didn't like. Satisfaction, maybe. Or anticipation. Like he'd been waiting for this moment. I asked him where he found the profile. He answered with a shrug, but he didn't look away. He made a small motion with the phone toward the screen, like the proof was enough and the rest was my problem now. My appetite was gone. My lunch turned into a cold weight in my stomach. I told him I needed to make a call. I stood too fast and felt dizzy, but I steadied myself on the edge of the table. As I walked out, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Maya. Not dramatic. Not suspicious. Just a normal message about picking up groceries after work, with a little heart at the end. My vision blurred for a second. I realized then that whatever this was, cheating, catfishing, some cruel coincidence, someone had stepped into my life without permission and flipped a switch. And I didn't know yet if Maya was the one holding the lighter. Or if Derek was. I didn't call Maya. Not right away. That surprised me, too. I walked to the stairwell instead of the parking lot, because I needed somewhere quiet that didn't feel like a stage. The stairwell smelled like dust and industrial cleaner. The hum of the building settled into my bones. I opened my own phone and pulled up Maya's social accounts, like a detective in a movie, except I was just a guy trying not to panic. Nothing new. No suspicious follows. No weird comments. No hints. Then I did the thing you do when you're desperate. I started scrolling backward through old posts, old tags, old photos she'd been in. I found the hiking photo. She'd posted it months ago. It was public. Anyone could have grabbed it. The coffee shop photo was from a friend's story. Again, public, easy. But the living room photo wasn't anywhere. That one was private. That one came from inside our apartment. I knew because the corner of our weird little ceramic bowl was visible on the table, the one Maya's mom gave us that we both pretend to like. I tried to think of who'd seen our living room. Friends, sure. Family, sure. The neighbor across the hall once helped us with a stuck door chain. Maintenance had been in once when the AC made that rattling sound. I hated that I remembered the guy's face. I hated that my brain was suddenly turning every normal interaction into a threat. My hands were steadier now, but my thoughts were worse. Calm on the outside, wildfire inside. I took a screenshot of the Tinder profile, only the parts Derek had shown me, and sent it to myself in an email with a subject line that was just a date. I didn't want it sitting in my photo roll like a bomb. Then I did something else that felt ugly. I texted Derek. I asked him to send me the profile link. He didn't respond right away. Of course he didn't. I went back to my desk, smiling at people like nothing had happened. I answered an email. I nodded in a meeting. I watched myself act like a normal person, and it felt like watching someone else from behind a window. At 3:12 p.m., Derek finally replied. He said Tinder didn't really do profile links. He offered to show me again later. Which was convenient. Too convenient. I waited until the day was almost over, because I didn't trust myself to hold it together for a full confrontation at lunch level. When the office started to thin out, I walked to the break area again. Derek was there, like he'd scheduled himself. He opened Tinder and pulled up the profile quickly, like he'd bookmarked it in his mind. This time, I didn't focus on the smile or the eyes or the pain in my chest. I focused on the corners. The small details people miss. I asked him to go to the photo in the living room again. He did. I stared at it longer than I wanted to. The photo was framed tightly, like it was meant to hide the background. But the background was still there, blurred but recognizable. The lamp. The rug. The shape of the window. And then I saw it. A reflection. Not a clear face. Not a perfect mirror moment. But enough, a faint shape in the glass of the picture frame on the wall. Someone standing behind the camera. Tall, broad shoulders. Holding a phone. For a split second, my brain tried to convince me it was me. But it wasn't. The phone case was wrong. The posture was wrong. And the angle was like someone trying to be sneaky. I looked up at Derek. He was watching my eyes, not the screen. I asked him where he got this. Not the profile. The photos. He gave me a look like I was being dramatic. Like I was making a big deal out of something that was already obvious. He made a small motion with his thumb, swiping to the next photo, as if to show me the variety. And that's when the rage finally found a path. Because there was a photo I hadn't seen earlier. Maya standing in a hallway that looked like ours, holding a takeout bag. Her hair up, no makeup, wearing an oversized sweatshirt. Not posed. Not curated. A photo you take when you're bored at home, and you send it to someone you trust. A photo you don't put online. A photo that, if it was real, meant she'd taken it for someone. Or someone had taken it of her without her knowing. My mouth went dry. I asked Derek, very carefully, when he first saw that profile. He answered with a vague timeline, recently, within the last week. Nothing exact. Nothing that could be pinned down. I asked him if he'd matched with her. He hesitated. A half second too long. Then he said yes. And that was the moment I understood, Derek wasn't just showing me something. He was involved. Maybe he was enjoying it. Maybe he was part of it. Maybe he'd walked into it and didn't realize it was dynamite. But he wasn't innocent. I left the break room without another word, because if I stayed, I would have said something I couldn't take back. In my car, I sat in the dark and stared at my own hands on the steering wheel. I wanted to confront Maya. I wanted to demand her phone. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to punish someone. I wanted to do everything loud and fast. Instead, I did the one thing I knew how to do when life got chaotic. I looked for patterns. I work in compliance, boring, gray, rule-based stuff. The kind of job where you learn to follow trails without getting emotional. Where you learn that people who get caught rarely confess because you ask nicely. They confess because you show them the trap they stepped into. So I drove home and acted normal. I kissed Maya hello. I ate dinner. I listened to her talk about her day. And I watched her face for any sign that she was hiding an entire second life. She wasn't. She was tired. She was affectionate. She was herself. Which should have relieved me. But instead, it made the situation worse. Because if Maya wasn't doing this, then someone else was. And that someone had been close enough to take pictures inside my home. That night, while Maya showered, I opened our router app and checked the device history. I didn't expect to find anything. I did. A device name I didn't recognize. Connected 2 nights ago. For 27 minutes. And the name of the device, like a cruel joke, was tagged as Derek's iPhone. I didn't sleep. I lay next to Maya while she breathed evenly, and I stared at the ceiling like it was going to confess to me. At 6:08 a.m., I got up quietly and took my phone into the kitchen. The router log was still there, bright and damning. There are ways it can be wrong, device names can be edited, spoofed, but most people don't bother. Most people assume no one's looking. I took screenshots. I backed them up. I emailed them to myself again. Then I checked something I'd never checked before. The smart lock history. Maya liked it because it meant we never argued about keys. It logged every entry and exit. I used to think it was a convenient feature. Now it felt like a witness. There was an unlock event 2 nights ago at 9:41 p.m. Neither Maya nor I was home then. We'd been at her cousin's place for dinner. I had photos to prove it. Time-stamped. Smiling faces, plates of food. So someone had opened our door while we were gone. And the smart lock didn't show a key code entry. It showed a Bluetooth unlock. Meaning someone's phone had been paired to it. I stared at that line until my eyes burned. I thought about maintenance. I thought about the neighbor. I thought about friends. Then I remembered something small and stupid. Derek had once joked that he could get into anything because he used to do tech stuff on the side. He'd said it with that casual arrogance people use when they want you to think they're dangerous. I hadn't taken it seriously. I took it seriously now. I didn't confront Maya. I didn't accuse her. I didn't want her reaction to tip off whoever was doing this, because if she panicked, she might text someone. If she texted someone, they'd know I was onto them. Instead, I told her I had an early meeting and left. On the drive to work, I made a plan that was equal parts careful and reckless. The careful part was evidence. The reckless part was that I was going to bait Derek. At the office, I did what I always do. I played normal. I answered emails. I attended a meeting. I made small talk. I waited. At noon, Derek appeared in the break area like a recurring villain. He had his phone out already, like he'd been excited for lunch all morning. I sat across from him, calm enough that I almost scared myself. He started swiping again. He tried to look casual, but I saw the little glances he kept throwing at me. He wanted this to be a shared secret now. A two-man moment. I asked him if he could show me the profile again. His face lit up, subtle, but there. He pulled it up fast. I asked him to open the messages. He hesitated. He tried to play it off like Tinder didn't work that way. I pushed, gently. He gave in. There were messages. Enough to make my skin crawl. The profile was flirting with him. It used the kind of lines that sounded like they were copied from somewhere, too slick, too generic. Then Derek did something that told me everything. He scrolled quickly past a section like he didn't want me to see it. I asked him to scroll back. He refused. Not openly. Just with that stubborn little smile people use when they think they have power. So I changed the angle. I told him I'd talk to Maya. Not fully. Not emotionally. Just the sentence, delivered like a fact. I watched his eyes. They widened slightly. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't sympathy. It was alarm. That's the difference between someone who stumbled into a mess and someone who built it. The builder panics when the homeowner notices the cracks. I asked him again, calmly, to scroll back. He finally did. And there it was. A request. The profile had asked Derek to move the conversation off Tinder. To text a number. To keep it private. That's not unheard of. People do that. But then I saw the next part, and my chest went cold. The profile had mentioned me. Indirectly, but clearly. It referenced your coworker in a way that only made sense if the person behind the profile knew Derek and knew me. It wasn't just catfishing. It was targeted. I looked up at Derek. He was watching my face like he was trying to measure how much I knew. He didn't look proud anymore. He looked like someone who'd overplayed his hand. I stood up and walked away without another word. I went straight to my manager's office, not to tell him I was being betrayed, not to make a scene. I told him I needed to speak to HR about a security concern related to employee data. Because that's the thing, when you make it about feelings, people treat you like you're unstable. When you make it about policy, people listen. HR gave me a meeting later that afternoon. I didn't share everything. Not yet. I only shared enough to get a foot in the door and a contact point. Then I called a friend of mine, Raphael, who works in fraud investigations for a bank. Not a cop. Not a superhero. Just someone who lives in the world where people lie for money. He listened, asked a few questions, and told me something that turned my stomach even more. This wasn't just about dating. There's a common scam where someone uses stolen photos to lure people, then pressures them into sending something private, then blackmails them. Sometimes they tie it to workplaces. Sometimes they go after people who have access to money or systems. Sometimes, they go after the person who would notice. I told Raphael my job title. He went quiet for a second, then said it made sense. Because I'm the guy who signs off on access reviews. I'm the guy who flags unusual logins. I'm the guy who can accidentally ruin someone's side hustle just by doing my job properly. Derek wasn't just playing games. He was poking the bear to see if it would wake up. That evening, I went home and told Maya the minimum truth. Someone was using her photos online, and I needed her help to lock down her accounts and review her devices. She was confused, then angry, then scared. Not guilty. Not defensive. Just violated. And that confirmed it. Maya wasn't cheating. She was being used. We spent 2 hours changing passwords, enabling extra security, checking her cloud backups for suspicious access. I looked for anything that would explain how private photos got out. Then Maya remembered something that made my blood run cold. A few weeks ago, she'd lost her phone for half an hour at a charity event. She'd assumed she'd left it on a table. Someone returned it. She'd never thought about it again. I asked her who else was at that event. She said coworkers were invited. And Derek had been there. My hands clenched so hard my knuckles ached. I looked at the evidence I already had, and I realized the only way to end this wasn't to accuse Derek. It was to let him keep thinking he was winning. So I made a fake Tinder profile. Not to catfish strangers. To catch a catfisher. I used a set of photos from an AI-generated face dataset, something that looks real but belongs to no one. I wrote a simple bio. I set the location close to the office. Then I swiped until I found the profile using Maya's photos. And I matched it. Within minutes, it messaged me. It didn't flirt like a person. It flirted like a script. And then it asked the same thing it asked Derek. To take it off Tinder. To text a number. I didn't text. I traced the number. And the name attached to the account made my throat tighten. Because the billing info wasn't in Maya's name. It wasn't in some random stranger's. It was under a prepaid plan registered to an address I recognized immediately. Derek's apartment complex. Same building. 1 floor below mine. The last piece always feels unreal, like you're watching the ending of a movie you didn't buy a ticket for. I didn't confront Derek in the break room. I didn't slam a binder of evidence on his desk. I didn't do anything dramatic. Because dramatic is what people like Derek thrive on. They want emotion. They want you reckless. They want you loud. I wanted him cornered. So I did this the boring way. The way that holds up when someone tries to lie their way out. First, I documented everything. Screenshots of the Tinder profile using Maya's photos. Router logs showing Derek's iPhone on our network. Smart lock history showing a Bluetooth unlock during a time we were away. The traced number connected to a prepaid plan tied to his apartment complex. Timestamps that matched office hours and lunch breaks. The message pattern that looked automated. Then I got help. Raphael connected me with someone in his network who handled digital evidence preservation. Not fancy, not TV stuff, just making sure the proof was collected in a way that couldn't be dismissed as he edited it. I also went back to HR, this time with a cleaner narrative. An employee appeared to be involved in a targeted impersonation scheme using another employee's partner's identity, and it may involve unauthorized access to a home network and personal devices. There were potential legal issues and reputational risks. HR stopped treating it like gossip the moment the words unauthorized access and legal risk entered the room. They pulled in corporate security. Corporate security pulled in IT. IT pulled in system logs. And that's where Derek's confidence quietly died. Because while he'd been busy trying to play puppet master, he'd gotten sloppy. He'd used the company Wi-Fi to manage parts of the scam. He'd logged into accounts on a work laptop. He'd used the same password pattern across multiple services. Not because he was a genius, because he thought no one would look. When security reviewed access logs, they found something worse than Tinder. Derek had been pulling internal employee directory data. Not full files. Nothing that would trigger immediate alarms. Just small pieces, names, roles, phone extensions, emails. The kind of information scammers love. It explained why the Tinder profile mentioned me. It explained why the language felt targeted. It explained why Derek had enjoyed showing me the profile. He wasn't just humiliating me, he was testing how close I was to noticing the bigger theft. The wow moment didn't come with music. It came when corporate security sat me down and told me they had video. From the charity event Maya had mentioned. There was camera footage showing Derek near the coat rack table where phones had been left during the event. Derek picking up a phone. Derek holding it too long. Derek turning away from the crowd. Derek slipping it into his pocket. Then later, Derek returning a phone. Maya's phone. My skin went numb. Because that meant the private photos didn't come from some hacker in another country. They came from the guy I'd shared lunches with. They came from a moment Maya trusted a room of people to be decent. Corporate security asked me if I wanted to press charges. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I felt sorry for Derek. I didn't. But because I knew what pressing charges would mean: time, stress, court dates, lawyers. Dragging Maya through a process where she'd have to explain how her identity was used. Maya made the decision for me. She said she wanted it on record. She didn't want him doing it to someone else. She didn't want him quietly leaving and starting over in another office. So we did it. We gave everything to law enforcement. And then the dominoes fell in a way that was almost disappointingly orderly. Derek was suspended pending investigation. He tried to act confused. He tried to act offended. He tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding. Then he got walked out. Then, weeks later, we got confirmation that he'd been charged, not just for impersonation-related fraud attempts, but for unlawful access and theft of data. I won't pretend I know every legal label, but the investigator explained it in plain terms. He wasn't just being gross. He was trying to make money. And he'd been doing it longer than I realized. The most satisfying part wasn't seeing Derek punished. It was seeing the story collapse around him when he could no longer control the narrative. At work, people stopped whispering about drama and started whispering about, how did we miss this? Maya got her accounts cleaned up. We filed takedown requests. Her photos were removed from the app and a few other places they'd been mirrored. We changed our locks. We replaced the smart lock. We resecured everything. We didn't assume safe ever again. And the question Derek asked me, the one I wasn't ready for, stopped feeling like a dagger. Because I realized something. He asked it like he was in control. But he asked it because he needed me to react. He needed my panic to cover his tracks. He needed my anger at Maya to keep me from looking at him. If I'd gone home and exploded, if I'd accused her, if I'd blown up my own life, Derek would have walked away clean. Instead, I stayed quiet long enough to see the real shape of the betrayal. Months later, Maya and I still got married. Not because the story made us stronger in some cheesy way. Because we handled it like a team. Because I didn't let a liar turn us against each other. Because she didn't minimize what happened or ask me to drop it for comfort. And every time I pass the break room now, I think about how close I came to wrecking my own life over a story someone else wrote. Derek thought he was the director. Turns out he was just the guy leaving fingerprints all over the camera.